Welcome back to Mexico Relocation Guide, where we teach you all about moving to Mexico the right way. Our guest today is Ray, who moved to Guanajuato, a beautiful city in the Bajío region of Mexico. Ray shares his experience finding his $289 a month rental, his love for Mexican culture, his thoughts on the pros and cons of living in Guanajuato, and why he thinks living in Mexico is the best decision for him. So thank you so much, Ray, for being an amazing guest on this channel. Let's hear his story, shall we?
Hi, y'all. My name is Ray. I am originally from Dallas, but I haven't lived there in more than 50 years, but I've lived all over Texas. I moved here to Guanajuato a little more than a year ago. I was originally going to go to Puerto Vallarta. Part of my reason for moving here was to immerse myself in Spanish. Puerto Vallarta, there was no way. If I would go into a tienda and speak Spanish, they would answer me in English. So I went back on YouTube, looked for other places that I might be interested in, looked at many cities. First time I saw Guanajuato, it was the top of the list. And then every other video I would watch, other cities would be nice, but nothing compared. So started my residency process, then moved here, sight unseen, other than videos. It has exceeded my expectations. Within a week, I had my residency, permanent residency, and I can't be happier. Other than I miss my wife, who is still in Texas. The primary reason for moving to Mexico was to immerse myself in Spanish. Cost of living is very, very affordable. The weather is so much better than where I come from. In Texas, it's very hot and can get very cold. Here, it gets a little warm, and we don't have air conditioning most places, and then we don't have heat in the winter. But all in all, it's very comfortable here. The people are so friendly. It's a pretty awesome place to live. I've visited, I've traveled a little bit in Mexico. I'm still happiest here than any place I've been. I looked a little bit at Panama and Colombia, but my Spanish is not good enough to live in Colombia, I do not believe. And living in Colombia or Panama is more difficult to get to. So if I wanted to go back to see my wife or my kids, it takes a lot longer. And changing flights, I can fly straight from DFW to here nonstop. Originally, many of my friends and family were concerned. Oh, the cartel, the cartel. But like I tell them, there's more presence of the cartel in parts of Texas, especially West Texas, where my wife and I were living. Um, but when I'm here, I can't tell the cartel is here. I mean, I feel much safer here walking at night, daytime, whenever, than I ever would walking in Dallas or the suburbs of Dallas. I just feel completely comfortable here, not worried about anything. Safety, like I said, safety was the main concern of my family, but from reading and primarily watching videos, I was pretty sure the people who live here know what they're talking about. And so I moved here very confidently and have even gotten more confident about and feel safe living here. As far as cultural shocks, there's nothing that's like, oh my gosh. There are cultural differences, but I enjoy that. I enjoy the challenge of jumping in and trying to be part of this. Nothing about this culture is judging or hard to accept. It's mostly fun. The culture here is so family oriented. It's way different than being in the United States. Guanajuato is a very touristy town. It's touristy in the fact that Mexicans come here to visit, not as many gringos. And it's so heartwarming to see families I'm talking 3 generations, grandmothers, parents, and children. And the children, teenagers even, will be clinging on to their parents and putting their heads on their shoulders or their grandparents. You're not going to see that in the United States with most families. It touches my soul to see that here, and I see it all the time. And the Mexican people love a fiesta. There's fiestas going so much of the time, and a lot of times they will invite you in. They want you to join in. It's cultural differences here are night and day, but it's a refreshing and good difference. As far as restaurants and culinary things, there are better places in Mexico. I'm not to say the food is not good here. The food is very good here. As far as Mexican food goes, I do like it, but I'm used to my Tex-Mex, and it's hard for me to get, like that as much as I do. But the food is good. There are many varieties, and people have options here. A little later, we're going to Tazón de Barro, which is a plant-based vegan restaurant. And when I go to have her food, Lucy cooks. She's amazing with the way she combines things and comes up with plates. But when I eat her food, even though I'm a carnivore, I do not miss meat when I eat at Lucy's because she's so creative with her food. There are so many places to have individuals. Mucho pan on Thursdays. They make the best cinnamon rolls. This isn't particularly Mexican cuisine, but it's just the cuisine of the city. It's not the best in Mexico, but it's good. When I first arrived in Guanajuato, I booked an Airbnb for 3 weeks to give myself, everybody told me a couple weeks is enough, but I want to be sure. So I booked an Airbnb, and I didn't just start looking immediately because I was going through the process of getting my residency. That happened very quickly. I was using a residency coordinator, and it happened like within a week I had my residency. Then I started the process of looking for a place to live. I didn't know exactly what I wanted, and since my wife wasn't here, I didn't need much. So first, I found just a room for rent in a big 3-bedroom house, and it was 2 other guys. So each person had their own room. I had full use of the entire house, which was, big kitchen, a backyard, patio, dining room, everything. Uh, Basically $200 a month. I didn't have to pay any of the bills. It even had a bathtub, which at my age, with all the walking, we do a lot of walking here. Soaking in a tub once in a while was pretty awesome. It is not common to have a bathtub in Mexico. It is so uncommon. So that was nice. I lived there for a couple months, and then I stumbled upon this place where I live now. I came here to help my friend in his garden. Well, this is the garden for the apartments. And while we were working in the garden, one of the neighbors came down, and she was telling us that she was moving back to the United States. And so I saw Paul's apartment, and I'm like, uh, is your apartment going to be available when you leave? Sure. And so she let me see it. And then my Spanish is still not great, but at that time, anyways, there was another friend here who spoke Spanish. So she called the dueña and made a deal. And I had a place to live as soon as the other lady moved out, which was a month ahead. So I stayed where I was for a little bit and then moved here. It just, I didn't go looking for an apartment. The apartment found me. It was so easy. I was expecting leases and having to translate from Spanish to English, but my landlord lives in the state of Durango, and it was just a matter of handshake, except it wasn't a handshake. It was just, she said what she wanted. My Mexican friend kind of talked her down a couple hundred pesos, which was nice. Um, and we made the arrangements over the phone. I went to OXXO and transferred that money into her account, and bingo, I had no lease to sign. I had no Um, Number of months to stay. In June, I will be here a year, and I I can't say my landlord is amazing. She's so nice. I only see her once in a while because she lives so far away, but she comes here for holidays and stuff to spend with her family that's still in Guanajuato. Yeah, as far as paperwork, I don't have any. You won't find that a lot here, but from time to time, some of it is operated just on a handshake. As far as my expenses here, I usually don't keep up with my expenses. I live way under what my Social Security is, so I don't even have to dip into my retirement to live here. And still at the end of a month, my Social Security, my bank account grows. So I'm not even spending my Social Security check each month. But my dining out and entertainment for the past month has been $118. I'm doing all this in dollars, not pesos. I converted it. My groceries, $158. The garbage collection here is different. They have dumpsters, but they don't have hydraulic trucks that come and empty those. People climb into the dumpster and they sort. Some guys come and they're getting cardboard and they get all the cardboard out. Then somebody else comes and gets, I don't know, just the kitchen refuse and puts it out. So anytime I see those guys, there's an OXXO, right? OXXO is like a 7-Eleven. I always run into the OXXO and get them a Coke and give them a Coke to tell them, hey, good job. We appreciate what you're doing. So things like that are miscellaneous. I spent $39 on miscellaneous. I rarely take a bus or a taxi, but I kept track of it this month. I took one taxi ride and probably 4 buses, totaling about $7. You can go across town for under $5 easily here. I don't have insurance here because I'm pretty healthy and I just don't feel like I need it. I do have my Medicare supplement though in the United States. So if I develop something catastrophic, I can go back to the States and fall back on that. Medicare supplement is $146 a month. And then my rent is incredibly inexpensive, $289 a month, all bills paid except my gas. And my gas tank, it's one of those tall cylinders, easily 3 months at a time. The next 600 pesos, roughly not even $20 a month. Very, very cheap. And then I have every day, 1 hour a day, I have my Spanish tutor. So 5 days a week, an hour a day, and that equals $155 for the month. My Spanish tutor it's online. He's in Costa Rica. He's originally from Colombia. Very, very, very good instructor. Okay, so totaling all that up, I was shocked when I saw this amount. $1,122 a month. It's incredible. It's like I said, my bank account grows, and all I've got putting in there is my Social Security. Is all I'm living off of. It's pretty incredible. You don't need a car to live in Guanajuato. Anywhere I want to go, I walk. I mean, this city doesn't really affect me adversely, but you do need to know if you're moving to Guanajuato, there's a lot of inclines and stairs. I can tell you it's harder to go down an incline and stairs than it is going up. But for the most part, I have adjusted. When I first moved here, sometimes my knees would swell. But now I've adjusted the way kind of you learn how to walk different ways. If you think about it when you're walking, oh, this feels a little better. So I just adjust how I walk and I do much better. I really don't have issues. I don't ever need a car here. If I want to go to Leon, I just take the bus. I go to the main bus station and then take a bus to Silao or Leon and then can take a taxi or just walk around there. I would think a car is more of a hassle here. There are so many pros to living in this city. There are a few cons. One of the cons is that there's no bus schedule. You can't go online and say, what bus line do I take to get to Valenciana? No, you look at the buses and it will say Los Momias, Valenciana, Cerro del Gallo. You look at this long list of handwritten locations that it's going to. And if yours isn't listed on there, then you need to know one of these major places that the place you want to go, what it's close to. But there are so many bus routes. I don't know how the people do it, but if I know where I want to go, I look for the name of that. Like Liverpool is a big store here, department store, kind of like Macy's. If I want to go there, I can't even go to El Centro and catch the bus. I've got to go way up to what used to be the old train station. And the only way I'm going to know that is to ask people. There's nothing online that tells you to go to Liverpool, you have to go here. If you're going to exchange money here, be sure to always decline the first exchange because that's going to be that actual bank's exchange rate. If the exchange rate is 17 to 1, that bank's exchange rate is going to be like 15.5 to 1. So always decline that first option, and then it will go ahead and process you somewhere close to the actual real exchange rate. There's a whole web of tunnels under the city, and if you don't know where you're going, you can get lost. It's unique. Other cities in Mexico may have a tunnel or two, but nothing like here. I don't know how the cab drivers, I guess they do it every day, but there are so many tunnels, but they are so nice. If we didn't have the tunnels here in Guanajuato, our traffic would be gridlock. When it's warm in the afternoon, it's nice to take the tunnels. For instance, from where I live here in Dos Rios to Embajadoras, where I go to an intercambio on Monday afternoons, 3 o'clock, it can be quite warm. So I will walk to the tunnel, which is less than 10 minutes from here. And from that tunnel, I take a series of other tunnels. I stay in the subterranean, mostly tunnels, for at least 90% of that mile and a tenth. So I stay nice and cool. I'm not sweating when I get to the intercambio. Also, the tunnels in certain parts, there's a charm and romance to them. The arches, the rock, the brick ceilings on some, they're all different. And it's just something that makes this city part of what it is, and not enough people point it out. When I first moved here, I was reluctant to go in the tunnels. They looked like a place you could get mugged. I never hear of anything like that happening, and now I take the tunnels anytime I know that I can. And if I think, oh, does that tunnel go up to wherever? I'm going to try it. And usually it goes where I'm thinking it's going, or I'll ask someone along the way because other tunnels split off. It's very safe. It's very cool. It's just a better way to go, especially in the heat of the day. If you move to a place like Guanajuato and you don't know the history, you're missing out. You're missing out on the charm and on the reasons for so many things. I live about 3 blocks from a building called Alhóndiga. Alhóndiga is one of the most important, well-known things having to do with the Mexican Revolution for the independence from the Spaniards. This is the place of the first battle. And then people go up to the lookout place. We call it Pipila. There's a statue of a person who they call Pipila that really wasn't his real name. But he was a hero, and you look at the statue and like, what is he holding on his back? If you don't know the history of this, then it's just like a statue. But to know the history of the place and why certain streets are named what they are. And when you see this big building of Alhóndiga, it's like if you live in Texas and you don't know what the Alamo is. You would be wise to learn Spanish while you're here and learn Mexican history. They have such a rich history. It's amazing. Living here in Guanajuato can be noisy depending on where you live. Normally in this garden, you don't hear much noise. But in other places, like when I lived in San Javier, where I was renting the bedroom, Sunday mornings, you would get up to something that sounded like a cannon going off. And it would go off every 15 minutes, about 5 booms. And this literally sounds like a cannon. And I'm told that that was this particular church or something didn't have a bell, so that's how they call the people to church. And in that neighborhood, there was also every other Friday night, there was a wild party, and that would go on for till about 2 in the morning. You either learn to adapt to it and embrace it, or you need to go the hell back to the United States. It's just a different culture. And the people here don't hear noise like Americans or Canadians hear noise. It's just part of the surroundings here. Now, like I said, it happens to be quiet here where I live, but I've lived the other place I lived and at the Airbnb I lived. It could get noisy. Dogs barking, roosters crowing, but that stuff you adapt to quickly. All in all, if you can't adjust to anything new, not only don't move to Guanajuato, don't move to Mexico. But if you adapt yourself and embrace it and try to become part of it, your life will be enriched. Here in Guanajuato, the people are always very receptive. It's like they want to know about you, but at the same time, they don't want to be intrusive. Mexicans are both very private and very social. And it's not a fine line, but you just gotta kind of grow into it. On the way to meet these guys this morning, I knew that I was a little too early, so I just stopped at a bench along the way. And I asked the lady in Spanish if I could sit there beside her on the bench. And she said, of course. And then I introduced myself. And immediately she wanted to know where I'm from. And then when I told her I lived here, she was like, oh, and she was so happy that I was learning Spanish. Some people don't realize when I start speaking Spanish that I'm not fluent because luckily, I don't have much of a gringo accent. And so they start talking to me rapidly. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I have to tell them in Spanish. I'm only learning, but they'll get going pretty fast. But once they get past this, sometimes I have to search for a word. Sometimes I have to ask them to repeat. But they're so happy that I'm interested in them and they're likewise interested in me, but they usually won't be as intrusive as I am. I start the conversation and then they feel comfortable and they're happy to go on. I find very little resistance to foreigners being here. I'm not saying I've met none, but it hasn't been anybody being rude to me. It's just gentrification has affected their lives greatly in some cases. So I can understand it if they were to be upset, but usually they're not showing animosity towards me. They just might say, some people can't afford to live in the center of the city anymore because, expats come in and offer way more. And that's bad, but I don't think I'm contributing to it. I hope I'm not. I live in a nice apartment, but it's not like super nice. And yes, I do pay a very low rent. I didn't come in and offer, oh, I'll pay more if you'll let me. I didn't do any of that. And I don't really think gringos do that. It's just sometimes the prices are higher because the people know expats can afford it and will pay it. In moving to Mexico in general, learn some Spanish. I mean, even if it's just using Duolingo or one of the apps, get basics. And the people who don't speak any English will be glad to work with you, and it's kind of fun back and forth. Also, I would suggest, unlike I did, I moved here without really knowing the city, and I have no regrets other than I miss my wife in Texas. We visit back and forth. But I would also say if you have a city in mind, go to that city, even though it's going to be more expensive. Rent an Airbnb for at least a month, maybe 6 weeks. Get to know that city before you move there. I lucked out. I felt like I knew the city from videos, but I watched hundreds of videos, not just on Guanajuato, on Mexico in general. But I know it. I watched at least 20 on Guanajuato. Um, but really, I should have come here with a month or 6 weeks in an Airbnb just to get the feel of it, make sure it was right for me. I just lucked out and it exceeded my expectations. When I first got to this city and I walked and I saw all these beautiful things, the colonial architecture, the fountains, the fiestas, the people in the street, I wondered, will this ever become not spectacular to me? And unfortunately, it hasn't. It hasn't lost all the charm, but it's not as inspirational as when I first saw it. And it kind of makes me sad that all these things aren't as special to me as when I first got here, but they're still very special. The things you're going to see in this city on typically a Friday or Saturday night is going to blow your mind. And if you've never seen fandango dancing and guitar playing and singing, something you've got to experience here. Thank y'all for listening. I hope you can get past my southern drawl. I've enjoyed doing this, and I hope you enjoy watching it, and I hope there's something you've learned out of it. So if you're coming to Mexico, bienvenidos.